Rain drummed against the windows of Murphy's Antiques in Salem, Massachusetts. As photography collector David Chen browsed through a collection of vintage portraits. The shop's owner had recently acquired an estate lot from a deceased collector, and David hoped to find rare examples of early 20th century American photography. Most of the photographs were typical for the era, formal family portraits, wedding pictures, and scenic postcards. But one image stopped him cold. It was a simple photograph, dated 1913 on the back, showing two young girls in a tender embrace. The older girl, perhaps 14, wore a white dress with delicate lace trim. Her dark hair was styled in the fashion of the period, pulled back with a ribbon. She gazed at the camera with the serious expression common in photographs of that era, her arms wrapped protectively around her younger sister. The younger girl, who couldn't have been more than 8 years old, was pressed close against her sister's side. She wore a similar white dress, her lighter hair falling in loose curls around her shoulders, but it was her expression that made David's breath catch. While the older sister looked solemnly at the camera, the younger girl was smiling, a bright, almost gleeful expression that seemed oddly out of place for a formal 1913 photograph. Children in portraits from this period were typically coached to maintain serious, composed expressions. A smile like this was unusual enough to be noteworthy. But there was something else about that smile that troubled David. Despite its apparent joy, there was something in the child's eyes that didn't match the happiness on her lips. Something that suggested the smile might be masking a darker truth. David turned the photograph over. In faded ink, someone had written, "Margaret and Clara Thornfield, June 1913, the last photograph before..." The sentence ended abruptly, leaving him with more questions than answers. "Interesting piece?" asked Murphy, the shop owner, approaching from behind the counter. "Very," David replied, unable to shake the feeling that this seemingly innocent photograph held secrets worth uncovering. Back in his Boston apartment, David placed the photograph under his professional magnifying equipment. As a collector specializing in early American photography, he had learned to look beyond the obvious subjects to examine every detail that might reveal the image's true story. Under magnification, the photograph's details became startlingly clear. The older sister's protective embrace seemed even more pronounced, her fingers gripping her sister's shoulder with what appeared to be genuine concern. Her eyes, while looking at the camera, seemed to glance worriedly toward her younger sister. But it was the younger girl's expression that became truly unsettling under close examination. The smile, which had seemed merely unusual from a distance, revealed subtle details that made David's skin crawl. The child's teeth were visible in her grin, but there appeared to be dark stains on several of them. More disturbing, there seemed to be a small dark spot at the corner of her mouth. David adjusted the lighting and focus, trying to understand what he was seeing. The dark spot became clearer. It appeared to be dried blood. He examined the child's hands, which were folded in front of her dress. Under magnification, he could see what looked like dirt or dark staining under her fingernails. The white dress, while appearing pristine from a normal viewing distance, showed tiny dark spots that could be stains. Most disturbing of all was the expression in the younger girl's eyes. While her mouth smiled broadly, her eyes held a look that David could only describe as predatory satisfaction. It was an expression no 8-year-old child should possess. David photographed the magnified details and enhanced them on his computer. The dark stains became more pronounced, and the child's expression grew more troubling with each adjustment. He reached for his phone and called his friend, Dr. Lisa Hartwell, a forensic psychologist who specialized in historical crime analysis. "Lisa, I need your professional opinion on something unusual," he said. "I have a 1913 photograph of two sisters, but there's something deeply disturbing about the younger child's expression and appearance, something that suggests this might not be an innocent family portrait." Dr. Lisa Hartwell studied the enhanced photographs David had sent her, her forensic psychology training immediately recognizing troubling patterns in the younger sister's expression and demeanor. "This is extraordinary. David," Lisa said during their meeting at her Cambridge office, "the child's facial expression shows what we call duping delight, a micro-expression that occurs when someone feels pleasure at successfully deceiving others. It's extremely rare to capture this in a photograph, especially from 1913. Lisa pointed to specific details in the enhanced images. Well, look at the asymmetry in her smile. The left side is more pronounced, which often indicates a false or forced expression. But more concerning is the look in her eyes. There's a lack of genuine emotional warmth that should accompany a real smile, particularly in a child." "What about the staining I found?" David asked. "The dark spots on her teeth and the material under her fingernails are definitely concerning. If this is indeed blood, combined with her expression, it suggests something violent may have occurred shortly before this photograph was taken." Lisa examined the older sister's body language more closely. Margaret's protective posture is telling. Her grip on Clara's shoulder isn't casual. She's holding her sister tightly, almost restrainingly. Her eyes show genuine worry, even fear. The incomplete inscription on the back mentioned this was the last photograph before something, David noted. That phrase suggests this image was taken at a significant moment, possibly documenting the sisters before some tragic event, Lisa concluded. Well, we need to research the Thornfield family in 1913. If my analysis is correct, this photograph may have captured evidence of something terrible. Lisa's professional assessment sent chills through David. I recommend we contact local historical societies in Massachusetts. If something violent happened to or involving these sisters, there should be newspaper records or police reports from 1913. David left the meeting with a growing sense of urgency. This wasn't just an unusual photograph. It might be evidence of a crime that had gone unrecognized for over a century. David's investigation led him to the Essex County Historical Society in Salem, where genealogist Patricia Wendell helped him trace the Thornfield family history through census records and local newspaper archives. The 1910 census revealed the family structure. Robert Thornfield, age 45, listed as a mill supervisor. His wife Helen, age 42, daughter Margaret, age 11, and daughter Clara, age 5. They lived at 127 Chestnut Street in Salem, a modest but respectable address near the textile mills. The Thornfields were a working-class family, Patricia explained, pulling out additional documents. Robert worked at the Numkeag Steam Cotton Company, one of Salem's largest employers. Helen took in sewing to supplement the family income. But as they searched through 1913 newspaper archives, a troubling pattern emerged. The Salem Evening News from July 1913 contained several brief mentions of incidents involving the Thornfield family. July 3, 1913. Neighbors report disturbances at Chestnut Street residence. Police responded to complaints of screaming. July 15, 1913. Local physician Dr. William Harrison called to treat injuries at Thornfield residence. Family declined to comment on nature of injuries. July 28, 1913. Missing cat found deceased behind Thornfield property. Local children report unusual circumstances. David's pulse quickened as he read the final entry they found, dated August 2, 1913. Tragic accident claims life of Clara Thornfield, age 8. Family requests privacy during this difficult time. There's your answer to the incomplete inscription, Patricia said grimly. This was indeed the last photograph before something terrible happened. But David wasn't satisfied. The newspaper reports suggested a pattern of disturbing incidents leading up to Clara's death. And the timing, just weeks after the photograph was taken, seemed too coincidental. Is there any way to access police records from that period? David asked. Patricia nodded. The Salem Police Department's historical records from 1913 are housed at the city archives. Given what we've found, you might want to request access to the files on the Thornfield family. David realized he was uncovering something far more sinister than a simple family tragedy. The Salem City Archives contained meticulously preserved police records from 1913, including detailed reports that painted a disturbing picture of the Thornfield family's final weeks. Sergeant Patrick O'Malley's incident reports revealed a pattern of escalating violence that the brief newspaper mentions had only hinted at. The July 3rd disturbance report contained witness statements from neighbors describing inhuman screaming and sounds of struggle coming from the Thornfield home. Mrs. Dorothy Fletcher, who lived next door, had told police it wasn't normal crying or arguing. The screams were filled with terror and they came from different voices, sometimes the mother, sometimes the older girl. But I never heard the little one cry. She would just laugh. The July 15th incident report was even more troubling. Dr. William Harrison had been called to treat Margaret Thornfield for what he described as defensive, wounds consistent with animal attacks. When questioned about the injuries, Margaret had claimed she'd been hurt while playing. But Dr. Harrison noted in his medical report, the patient shows signs of extreme psychological distress. Injuries appear intentionally inflicted. Most disturbing was a report filed by Officer James Murphy on July the 20th, responded to complaint from Mrs. Elizabeth Carey regarding discovery of mutilated animals in the area surrounding 127 Chestnut Street. 3 cats and 1 dog found with injuries consistent with deliberate torture. No witnesses. But Mrs. Carey reports seeing the younger Thornfield child in the vicinity of each discovery. David's hands trembled as he read the final police report, dated August 1st, one day before Clara's death. Robert Thornfield had gone to the police station personally, requesting to speak with the chief. According to the report, he had said, "My youngest daughter, there's something wrong with her. She's not right in the mind. My wife is terrified, and Margaret won't leave her room. I don't know what to do." The next entry was Clara's death report. Child found deceased and family well. Father claims she fell while playing. Investigation pending. But a handwritten note in the margin, added later, read, "Investigation closed due to lack of evidence. Family moved away shortly after funeral." David realized the photograph had captured something horrifying, a dangerous child whose violent tendencies had terrorized her own family before, ultimately leading to tragedy. David's research took him deeper into the official records surrounding Clara Thornfield's death. The 1913 medical examiner's report, filed by Dr. Samuel Whitmore, contained details that contradicted the official story of an accidental drowning. Dr. Whitmore had noted several inconsistencies. Deceased shows no signs of struggle consistent with accidental drowning. No water in lungs. Bruising on throat suggests strangulation occurred prior to body being placed in well. Recommend further investigation. However, a follow-up note dated 3 days later stated, family has provided witness testimony supporting accidental death theory. Father's grief appears genuine. Investigation suspended pending new evidence. David found this sudden closure suspicious, especially given the pattern of disturbing incidents leading up to Clara's death. He continued searching through the medical records and discovered Dr. Harrison's private notes about his treatment of the Thornfield family. In a journal entry dated July 16, 1913, Dr. Harrison had written, Margaret Thornfield's injuries are deeply concerning. The child is clearly traumatized and speaks in whispers about her sister's games. When I examined the wounds, Margaret flinched and begged me not to tell Clara she had sought medical attention. This suggests the younger child may be the perpetrator of these injuries. Another entry from July 25th was even more explicit. Mrs. Helen Thornfield came to my office in a state of extreme distress. She reports that Clara has been exhibiting a violent behavior toward animals and family members. The child shows no remorse and appears to enjoy causing pain. Mrs. Thornfield fears for Margaret's safety and her own. Dr. Harrison's final entry about the family, dated July the 30th, read, I have advised the Thornfield parents to seek immediate help for Clara's behavioral problems. The child's lack of empathy and apparent pleasure in causing suffering suggests a severe psychological disorder. I fear this situation will escalate if not addressed. Immediately, David realized that the photograph had captured a family in crisis, a dangerous child whose violent tendencies had created a reign of terror in her own home, and whose death just weeks later may not have been the accident it appeared to be. David's investigation led him to genealogy websites, where he posted inquiries about surviving members of the Thornfield family. His breakthrough came when he received a response from an elderly woman named Elizabeth Morrison in Portland, Maine. Margaret Thornfield was my grandmother, Elizabeth wrote. She rarely spoke about her childhood, but she kept a diary from 1913 that she made me promise to preserve. She said someday someone would need to know the truth about what really happened to her sister Clara. David immediately drove to Portland to meet Elizabeth, a retired librarian in her 80s. Margaret Thornfield had lived to be 89, dying in 1988, but she had carried the secrets of that terrible summer for her entire life. Elizabeth led David to her grandmother's bedroom, where a small wooden box sat on the dresser. Inside was Margaret's diary from 1913, written in the careful script of a 14-year-old girl facing an unimaginable nightmare. Grandmother made me read this when I turned 18, Elizabeth said softly. She wanted someone in the family to know the truth, but she was too ashamed to tell the story herself. The diary entries from June 1913, around the time of the photograph, painted a horrifying picture of life with Clara. June 15th. Clara hurt Mr. Peterson's cat today. She brought it home and showed me what she did to its eyes. She was smiling the whole time, just like in the photograph Father made us take. I wanted to be sick, but she said if I told anyone, she would do the same thing to me while I slept. June 22nd. Mother found the remains of 3 birds in Clara's room. When confronted, Clara just laughed and said they had been playing a game. She asked Mother if she wanted to play the same game. June 28th. Clara cut me with Father's razor while I was sleeping. When I woke up screaming, she was sitting beside my bed, watching the blood run down my arm. She told me it was beautiful and asked if I wanted to see something even prettier. The final entry, dated August 1st, 1913, revealed the truth about Clara's death. I couldn't let her hurt anyone else. When she told me she was planning to play with the baby next door, I knew I had to stop her. God forgive me, Margaret's diary contained the full confession of what really happened on August 2nd, 1913. Her final entries revealed a 14-year-old girl driven to desperate action to protect others from her dangerous sister. August 1st continued, Clara showed me her special box today, a collection of animal parts she had been keeping under her bed. She described in detail how she had tortured each creature, how she had studied their expressions as they died. Then she told me she wanted to try the same things on the Murphy baby next door. She said she had been watching little Timothy through the window and planning what she would do to him. I realized then that no one was safe while Clara lived. Mother and Father were too frightened of her to act. The police wouldn't believe such things about an 8-year-old child. I was the only one who could stop her. August 2nd. I told Clara I wanted to see her favorite hiding place by the old well. She was excited, thinking I finally wanted to join her games. When we got there, I asked her to show me how she held down the animals while she hurt them. She demonstrated eagerly, lying on her back beside the well. I pushed her in. She looked surprised for just a moment before she fell. There was no struggle, no screaming. She just disappeared. When I ran home to tell Mother and Father that Clara had fallen into the well, I saw relief in their eyes, not grief. The diary's final entry was heartbreaking. Father says it was an accident, and we must all believe that. But I know what I did. I killed my sister to save everyone else. The photograph we took in June shows the truth. Clara's smile was the smile of someone who enjoyed causing pain. I pray God will forgive me for what I had to do. Elizabeth wiped tears from her eyes. Grandmother lived with this secret her entire life. She said she never regretted saving that baby next door, but she carried the guilt of taking a life. Even one as dangerous as Clara's, David realized the photograph had captured the last moment before Margaret Thornfield was forced to make an impossible choice, and that Clara's disturbing smile had indeed revealed the darkness that made that choice necessary. David researched the broader historical context of the Thornfield tragedy, consulting with Dr. Lisa Hartwell about childhood psychological disorders in the early 1900s and the limited resources available to families dealing with dangerous children. In 1913, there was virtually no understanding of psychopathy in children, Dr. Hartwell explained. Families dealing with a child like Clara would have had no professional support, no treatment options, and no legal protections. Society simply wasn't equipped to handle such cases. David discovered that the Thornfield family's experience wasn't entirely unique. Newspaper archives from the early 1900s contained scattered reports of families dealing with violent children. Though such cases were rarely reported accurately due to social stigma, more importantly, David found evidence that Margaret's desperate action may have indeed saved lives. Timothy Murphy, the baby next door, had grown up to become a successful doctor, living a full life with children and grandchildren of his own. His survival, and the survival of other neighborhood children, had been made possible by Margaret's terrible sacrifice. David also uncovered what happened to the surviving Thornfield family members. After Clara's death, they had moved to New Hampshire, where Robert found work in a different mill. Margaret had eventually married and raised 3 children of her own, but according to family records, she had been an exceptionally protective mother, never leaving her children alone with strangers and always being vigilant about their safety. Helen Thornfield had died in 1925, reportedly never fully recovering from the trauma of that summer. Robert had lived until 1934, working quietly and avoiding any attention. The family had effectively disappeared from history, carrying their secret with them. Elizabeth Morrison showed David a final letter. Margaret had written shortly before her death in 1988. I want people to understand that sometimes good people are forced to do terrible things to protect others. Clara wasn't evil because she chose to be. She was born with something broken inside her, but that didn't make her any less dangerous. I saved lives that summer, and I would make the same choice again. 6 months after discovering the photograph, David stood before an audience at the Massachusetts Historical Society, presenting his findings about the Thornfield family tragedy. The story had attracted attention from historians, psychologists, and criminologists interested in early 20th century case studies of childhood psychopathy. The 1913 photograph now resided in the Society's collection, displayed alongside Margaret's diary excerpts and the historical documents David had uncovered. Rather than being a simple family portrait, it had become a powerful testament to the impossible choices families sometimes face when dealing with dangerous individuals. Dr. Lisa Hartwell had published a paper about the case, noting how it illustrated the complete lack of resources available to families dealing with psychopathic children in the early 1900s. The Thornfield case shows us how isolation and desperation could drive even good people to extreme actions, she had written Elizabeth. Morrison had donated Margaret's diary to the Historical Society, ensuring that her grandmother's story would be preserved accurately. She carried this burden for 75 years, Elizabeth said during the presentation. And she deserves to be remembered not as a killer, but as a protector who made an impossible choice. David displayed the photograph one final time, pointing out details that now told the complete story. Clara's smile in this image isn't the innocent joy of a child. It's the satisfaction of someone who has found pleasure in causing pain. Margaret's protective embrace isn't just sisterly affection. It's the desperate attempt of a girl trying to shield others from a dangerous sibling. As David concluded his presentation, he reflected on how the photograph had revealed a truth that had been hidden for over a century. Margaret Thornfield's secret had finally been told, not to sensationalize a tragedy, but to honor a young girl who had sacrificed her innocence to protect others. The disturbing smile behind Clara Thornfield's embrace had indeed concealed something terrible. Not her own victimization, but her dangerous nature that had terrorized a family and threatened a community. And Margaret's protective arms had represented not just love, but the burden of being the only person brave, enough to stop her sister before she could hurt anyone else. The photograph would remain as a reminder that sometimes the most innocent-looking images can contain the darkest truths. and that understanding the full context of history requires looking beyond surface appearances to uncover the complex human stories hidden beneath.